Somehow, this news outlet, they only found people who were like, man, it's just really interesting to see him butt naked with his tiny crooked and he's hanging. Like, great job, man. Great job. You couldn't find anyone who had a really serious problem with what that was, who could have done 1 + 1 = 2 and been like, you're inciting violence on someone who has already, been attempted murdered twice in the last, 2.5 months? Oh, you couldn't find anybody to give that side of the story? Weird, Almost like your news station is owned by someone who would like to see him take a bullet. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this statue of Donald Trump that has been erected in the Nevada desert, and it is unbelievable. This is one of the most unbelievable things I've seen. I feel like I say that every single video. But if you have not seen this thing, if you are unclear about what we're talking about, this is insane. It's a 43-foot, okay? So think of Shaq. Shaq is 7'2". That's an enormous person. This is 43 feet, okay? Erected in the middle of the desert, and I'm going to show it to you in a second. And they've got him hanging from a wired noose, okay? He's naked. They have made his anatomy very clearly, intentionally, like, he's kind of chubby and he's got a little baby weenie. And it's called crooked and, hang on. It's called crooked and obscene. Okay. So what we're going to talk about related to that, first and foremost, is who did it. Who did this? Okay? This thing cost a lot of money. It took a lot of organization. So we're going to talk about who did it and what we think should happen to that group, given the circumstances. What the reaction would be in the United States if you did the same thing to the opposing candidate. And I'll take Kamala out of it. I'll take Kamala Harris out of this thing because it's like, you don't even need to put it on those terms. I mean, if it was Kamala and, because she's definitely 100% black and there's definitely no questions about that. There's no one's bringing up any very interesting questions about her ethnicity, right? Okay. If there's a 5% chance that she's black and you put that statue up and then you made her nude, like the people who did that would do life in prison. Then you're going to want to stick around for this because we're going to talk about Andrew Soros and who he's engaged. I assume a lot of you guys who follow this know this already, but who Andrew Soros, who is now taking over the George Soros empire, who he's engaged to, and then also this little number related to the 200 radio stations takeover. Now, why is that relevant right now? It's more about the approval process in the government, how fast they're able to get this deal done through the government approval process. And again, this has never been done this fast. They are doing it right now before the election, and it is perfect. Those two stories, okay, George Soros, who he's engaged to, and how they are getting this through so fast is like this. You want to understand how the entire apparatus of the deep state and the government are working against the people who support the other candidate. This is it. This is the perfect example because you will never find an opposing story to this. Okay. So when you look at these two stories, it is just the quintessential reason that people who are on the side that we're on feel like we're getting a raw deal all the time because we are, right? We are. If we live in a democratic, if we live in a democratic republic or whatever, where we're supposed to actually have say in how these things go and the government's supposed to represent both sides, you're supposed to be able to make compromises, so on and so forth, then how come every single time that an institution gets involved in these things, it always breaks one direction? And it not only, they get favorable treatment, but the other side gets the exact opposite, right? And again, we're not talking about Republicans and Democrats, to be clear. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the uniparty, and then we're talking about the populace, people who represent a very, very large group of Americans, probably the majority. You know what I mean? So that's what we're going to get into right here. And again, I will obviously the Trump statue story is more sensational, but this is actually the bigger story. This is actually the bigger story. But again, this one is perfect because you will never in your entire life find a bigger double standard than this ever. Because that's really what this video is about. Double standards. Okay. So let's talk about this. Let's just let a journalist run you through the story about the statue in the desert, and then we're going to get into the fun part, which is what would happen if the shoe was on the other foot.
Las Vegas. It's a giant nude marionette of Trump. As Ambar Rodriguez learned who put it there, and she also learned why.
Marie, it has been car after car with people trying to get a look of the art installation of former President Trump themselves. Well, News 3, was contacted by a spokesperson for the artist who wants to remain anonymous, but...
Oh, I bet they do. Oh, I bet they do. And we're going to call, this is an artist. We're calling this an artist. You know, oh, it's an artist. You're like, an artist. Yeah, it's an artist, man. It's an artist. You're all, they literally just constructed a big, like, you know, beige, naked Donald Trump. They attached a tiny, crooked dick, okay, and then hung him from a wired noose like this. That's art. We're calling that an artist.
Did share some insight. Now they tell us that the piece is titled Crooked and Obscene. It is 43 feet tall, 10 feet wide marionette, weighs 6,000 pounds. It is made out of foam over rebar. The artist's spokesperson tells me the purpose is to ignite conversations, and it sure has already, with the images of the marionette going viral.
Yeah, ignite a conversation like you should go to prison, artist. Okay? They've already taken 2 shots at him. Do you understand? Like, I don't know. Like, what? They've already tried to kill this dude twice. Twice. The other side, the party of gaslighters. Oh my God, they're constantly trying to incite violence if they're the MAGA people. When have the MAGA people ever done something like this? When have the MAGA people ever put something up that clearly is like, here's a version of a dead politician hanging naked exactly as they should be? Do you understand? I'm going to pose a question to you guys, and this is actually a serious one. Do you understand what would happen to, this is what that, you know, usually when I talk about Hillary Clinton, I'm like, I preface it like, you know, but I would have no problem with anyone sending this to Hillary Clinton because she's going to agree with me. Do you understand what would happen to the artist if they did a naked, a 6,000 pound naked statue of Hillary Clinton hanging like that, and they intentionally were mean about her body? Okay, like seriously, do you have any idea what would happen to that person? I do. Hillary Clinton is literally the last person in the history of the world that anybody who understands the way the world works would do that about. They would be lucky if all that happened is their car mysteriously crashed and, you know, the person didn't make it. I would see a much more likely scenario being every person in their family's businesses would get bankrupted. They would audit every single person. They would put many of them in jail. And after they had taken everything from that person, then they'd get in a car accident. I mean, like they would, this would never fly. But that's because she is in the belly of the beast and she actually has true institutional power. You don't fuck with people like her, dude. If you really understand the way the world works, you don't fuck with Hillary Clinton, man. And you certainly don't do this. And again, I'm just observing the way the world works and saying like, if you, and so let's just take Hillary Clinton out of it because that's like a personal situation, right? Like that's like her personally is that's the last enemy you would ever want in ever. But let's just say it's Kamala, okay? Let's say it's Kamala Harris, just because she's running for president. I don't consider her the same as Hillary Clinton at all. Hillary's 150 times smarter than Kamala Harris and 100,000 times more dangerous. But let's say you did it to Kamala Harris. You want to know what's going to happen? You're going to go to jail. Simple as that. Just like that. They would bring in federal resources who would take this thing down in 1 second. They would arrest the people who were involved. They would charge them with some kind of, political violence, and they would go to jail. That's what would happen. And what happens when it's Trump? They drive by, people take videos of it, and they do news stories about it. It's unbelievable. And this is a guy who's had 2 shots taken at him already.
I was pulling out, I looked over and I saw something hanging, and it looked like Donald Trump. So I had to come over and get closer to see what it was, and it is Donald Trump. If you know the Trump hair, you can tell that's what they were trying to do. So good job, whoever did it. Good job.
Of course, it's
good job. Nice, dude. These people are fucking deranged, dude. Like there's just no other way to say it. Like you're deranged. If you do not understand why this is not okay. Okay, if I saw one of Kamala Harris, I wouldn't be like, wow, man, great job. Great job, man. I mean, when I said, I saw that face and I'm like, that looks like the kind of girl who was the side piece for Willie Brown in San Francisco. And that's how she got her start. I knew as soon as I saw that face, that's someone who would be the side piece for a married man. And then ask him, if she's, but good job. No, I would be like, are you out of your fucking mind? That's the vice president of the United States. You have no respect at all. And also, if she'd had 2 shots taken at her already, I'd be like, are you fucking crazy? You hung her? You made a 6,000-pound statue of her and you hung and made it look like she's hanging? Are you out of your mind? What are you doing? Get that thing down. Arrest the person who did that. But the thing is, I'm consistent, okay? I'm not a hypocritical, brainwashed fucking idiot like you, guy.
Statement, but there's no text saying something about Trump or, of course it's a bit weird maybe that he's nude, but it's also interesting to see. I mean, it's a way of, portraying him, I guess, but I think it's an interesting piece of art.
So you understand, another reason why this is an important thing to show, and I just put this together right now. Another reason why I show you this story on this outlet right before I show you the thing about the 200 radio stations that the Soros bought is for this, okay? This story, do you think that there is a single supporter of Donald Trump who sees this that doesn't have the exact same reaction as me? Of course not. But somehow this news outlet, they only found people who are like, man, it's just really interesting to see him butt naked with his tiny crooked dick and he's hanging. Great job, man. Great job. You couldn't find anyone who had a really serious problem with what that was? Who could have done 1 + 1 = 2 and been like, you're inciting violence on someone who has already, been attempted murdered twice in the last, 2.5 months? Oh, you couldn't find anybody to give that side of the story? Weird, almost like your news station is owned by someone who would like to see him take a bullet. You know what I mean? Now, let's move over to this part of the story, okay? So, to start us off, let's talk about the Alex Soros and Uman Ebedin union. And I told you guys, I am absolutely terrified of Hillary Clinton, so I'm going to do this in the most polite possible way, okay? So, Uman Ebedin, if you don't know who she is literally like Hillary Clinton's closest, at least as far as the public knows, confidant. She's been her right hand forever. One of the reasons, I imagine, that her ex-husband, you may remember him, Anthony Weiner, got so many new chances. He was about to win to be the mayor of New York after already going through all those different scandals where he's like, oh, oopsie, I sent my weenie to people. And then like, oh, oopsie, I've been sending it to children. And like, no one gets that many chances in politics. No one. And as I told you guys, if you really understand who has real power, like there's not that many of them, dude. You have the like really mysterious ones that are behind the scenes whose names you probably only know their last name. And in some cases you have no idea who they are. And that's by design. But then you have this other class that is very public and works in lockstep with all those people. And there are very few who are like Hillary Clinton. You had Donald Rumsfeld when he was alive, Dick Cheney, people like that, who really have been at the top of government, have run intelligence organizations. Hillary Clinton was a Secretary of State. Okay. Like people hear secretary. I've talked about this a million times. People hear secretary and I think it automatically kind of discounts what that person does, unless it's Secretary of Defense. They're like, oh, Secretary of Defense. Okay. Well, that person's probably pretty powerful. You're all pretty powerful. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty powerful, dude. But Secretary of State, they're like, oh, I don't, whatever. You're like, you understand that person is at the top of the food chain and interacts with all the heads of the intelligence agencies and then goes and negotiates on behalf of the United States, okay? Like negotiates with the heads of state across the world for the United States and works with the intelligence agencies so they have the absolute most top secret information and then they're negotiating, okay? Like you have any idea the level of power a person in that role has? You know what I mean? And you think that they after working with all of those people, you think they lose their fucking phone number? Like they don't. That's what I'm saying. The world works in a very simple way if you understand how people interact with each other. Okay, like think about this. Okay, I'll use myself as an example. Right? I've been in a lot of different businesses. Right? I've had jobs where I was an employee. I've built companies where I had relationships with people where I hired them or they hired me and all that stuff. Okay, I don't think that there is an example of someone that I have worked with where I could not make a phone call to them, where if there's something going on that's in their best interest, I couldn't present it to them and have them have a conversation with me and then us potentially move forward with it, right? Like there's not one, literally not one. Not one. Even people that I had disagreements with or whatever, there's no one who I don't still consider a business contact that I could call and be like, hey man, so this guy brought this to me. You're the first person I thought of. Here's what I was thinking. Okay, so if you're good at that kind of thing in terms of networking and demonstrating value, demonstrating you can be trusted, and also, you know, I would imagine in her case, demonstrating that you don't fuck with her, right? Although I don't think that's quite as important, for what I'm talking about. That's your network, and they will do things for you. They will do things that are either in your best interest, in their best interest, or, promote a common goal. And so what I'm telling you is these people that are in her network or in those guys' network are the most powerful people in the world. And so in the event that they want to, kind of put their foot on the scale and make it to where a certain candidate is considered to be equivalent to, whatever, to like, you know what I mean? Like that, I'm telling you, these are the people who are orchestrating these things because they're just it's not that many people that have to be involved in this stuff to create the world that you're in. And what I'm saying is Andrew Soros and George Soros, they are the most public version of the ones who are behind the scenes. All right. Like the behind the scenes, like I've always thought it's kind of weird that Soros is as public as he is because I consider him more of like the behind the scenes people, but for some reason they're just out with it now, But you want proof? Human identity, like Hillary Clinton's right-hand lady and the son of George Soros are now getting married. Okay? It's like it's like, I told you, I told everybody, this is exactly how it works, right? So here's the thing, right? So let's look at this story about them winning the takeover of the 200 radio stations and why this is important. Okay, so they bought these 200 radio stations, and all honesty, that's not even that many, like it's honestly not even that many. I mean, it's a lot. But if you look at how many news stations are owned by single entities, it's unbelievable, right? But the thing that's important about this is how fast they are getting it through the approval process, right? Because this is obviously potentially going to impact the election, right? And so, but like what reason would they get fast tracked through this process, through the FCC? Like why? If the FCC is doing it even on both sides, why would they do this? Okay. The Biden administration is fast-tracking approval for the transfer of more than 200 radio stations licenses from bankrupt broadcaster Odyssey Inc. to a nonprofit controlled by George Soros' progressive philanthropy empire. His progressive philanthropy empire. It's unbelievable they get away with this, dude. Like, oh, is that what that is? They're doing this for, so hang on. Just to be clear, he's doing this for philanthropy. He's buying these 200 radio stations for philanthropy versus operating an enormous organization that doesn't have to pay taxes in order to buy a thing that then they could turn around and push propaganda through, which ultimately is going to put the people that they want into offices that they want so they can pull the strings throughout government and then enrich themselves. Like, oh, weird. There it is. Let's see what she's saying right now.
Are engaged in this kind of propaganda, just as Mueller indicted a lot of Russians who were engaged in direct election interference and boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
Nothing to see here. Just a former president.
What? Americans that are partaking in propaganda? I mean, basically, why don't you just arrest every single person that is even moderately involved in the political process and has a platform? You know what I mean? Everybody is spinning it one way or the other, whether they realize it or not. You know what I mean? And again, just to be clear, Hillary Clinton, if you don't want me talking about something, all you have to do is text message me, hey, Jesse, I know your name. I would prefer if you don't talk about this. Okay? I'm not fucking crazy. I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm that afraid of her, dude. I'm glad she doesn't know who I am. But anyway, so, I mean, look, bottom line, okay, like in this decision, we approve the assignment of licenses held by Audacity, which has been under the control of a bankruptcy court, to the new Odyssey, which so that the company can emerge from bankruptcy proceedings. To suggest otherwise is cynical and wrong, as this precedent clearly demonstrates our practices here and in the prior cases is designed to facilitate the prompt and orderly emergence from bankruptcy of a company that is a licensee under the Communications Act. You know what I'm going to say right now, actually? Okay, hang on. And then they said, the Republican FCC Commissioner, Brandon Carr, issued a dissenting statement accusing the commission of expediting the licensing in an unprecedented fashion instead of following federal law. The commission's decision today is unprecedented. Never before has the commission voted to approve the transfer of a broadcast license, let alone the transfer of broadcast license for over 200 radio stations across more than 40 markets without following the requirements and procedures codified in federal law. Not once. And yet the commission breaks the new ground today without seeking public comment on altering our established regulations, without actually changing the rules on the book, and without seeking the feedback of other federal agencies with relevant equities. A Trump appointee to the commission, Carr, routinely criticizes the agency's direction and testified about the Biden administration's policy record at a House Oversight Committee hearing earlier this month. And yet, you know, there's nothing else to say. And yet, guess what's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. They're just going to get away with it. They're just going to, this is what's going to happen, you know. Do they have to respond to, it's like, hey, have you ever done this before? They're like, huh? Have you got, is he right? Is this the first time ever that you guys have done this? They're all, we're not going to answer that. You're like, of course you're not, you know. That's enough.